in the meantime, let's talk about this because there are, frankly, thorny ethical questions. We want to kind of dive into those with Eric Eggers at the Government Accountability Institute. He joins me. Eric, good to see you here. I know you've been following this all throughout the course of the weekend. So many people are talking about it. And I have to ask this. Can it be done? I mean, constitutionally, legally, the White House and the DOJ say it's perfectly fine and legal, but there are some concerns, aren't there?
There are some concerns. Chief among them, the top legal authority that seemed to have given their blessing to this arrangement, is Attorney General Pam Bondi, whom herself previously worked as a lobbyist for none other than the country and government of Qatar, the entity that's gifting this plane to the White House. So people that want to raise ethical concerns, I think, can start there. And I don't think that any reasonable person would just easily dismiss that in terms of just holding that up to the light and let's have an honest conversation about, is that okay? But there's a couple different ways to look at it, Andrew. And so you can raise the ethical concerns there, but then you could maybe balance those by saying, well, what's more unethical, receiving a gift from this foreign entity or the fact that we even need to look outside for a new plane to begin with? Remember, this is something that Donald Trump brought up initially back in February. On February 20th, 2025, he held one of his press briefings among the 40-year-old Air Force One. He said, listen, Boeing is dramatically behind. We renegotiated this contract back in 2018. They're supposed to give us 2 new Air Force Ones for $4 billion. Yeah. Now, Boeing has proven to be delayed in terms of not only just being able to deliver their promises of space flight, which they had to rely on Elon Musk and SpaceX to return the astronauts in that boondoggle, but they also then, are now saying, well, we're going to speed up, so we're not going to be delayed by as much as we thought we'll be delayed. We'll deliver the 2 new planes by 2027. So we're only even in this position because you have a defense contractor who I think has gotten maybe a little used to underperforming and overcharging, and that's something that Donald Trump said, that's not acceptable. We're going to find a different solution.
Yeah, to that point, that's more of an indictment on kind of Boeing's production capacity. That company has been facing and plagued with many, many issues here. I want to talk, though, about, foreign gifts writ large from foreign nations to presidential administrations. It's so common. We've seen this many, many times before here. But a $400 million luxury jet, can you compare that? I mean, you're hearing the word unprecedented. As far as foreign gifts from foreign nations to U.S. presidents go, I haven't seen anything like it anywhere comparable. Have you in history?
Well, remember, I work for the Government Accountability Institute, and we're run by a gentleman named Peter Schweizer. Sure. He wrote a book called Secret Empires, in which we detailed for the first time an arrangement between the son of the current president, or then current president, Joe Biden, then he was vice president, and the government of China for what was then an unprecedented $1.5 billion joint venture deal that no one else had access to. So I think foreign governments have been looking to find their way to purchase a seat at the table, if you like, for a long time. We also did a book called Clinton Cash, which exposed the ways in which people donated to the Clinton Foundation and then tried to get contracts or deals from Hillary Clinton's Department of State. So this is not unprecedented, unfortunately. And I will just say this, I think you have to kind of look at the larger picture. And I don't consider it my job to come on here and defend Donald Trump, but I would just consider, you talked about kind of the news of the day, and this Qatari air deal is one story, but so is this unprecedented renegotiation of drug prices with Big Pharma. And I actually just over the weekend listened to a podcast with Jon Stewart, no conservative, no fan of Donald Trump, and he was talking to 2 moderate members of Congress, and they said the reason why this has never been done is because of how powerful and influential, and quite frankly, how much money Big Pharma spends to make sure that the status quo maintains to their benefit.
Yeah, Eric, we've covered that story. We were just covering that story. We were showing the president's remarks on that very story, signing the executive order. But back to this, because it is timely and newsworthy. So many people are talking about it. I want to go to Capitol Hill as well. You're hearing from a lot of lawmakers, conservatives and Democrats alike, saying Congress has a role here. Do they? Do they have a role in either approving or disapproving of this sale if it goes through?
Yeah, well, I guess technically if it's a gift to the Department of Defense and Congress has the power of the purse, then they should have some level of oversight in terms of, what is, I guess it's not an expenditure, it's a surplus budget item. And but that's the tension in this current Trump administration, right? People consider Congress to be so gridlocked and dysfunctional. That's why Donald Trump's been issuing executive orders in such a historic rate. So, and actually, that's a point that I think observers know. They say, listen, because there is such partisan gridlock, held in part because of special interests, that's what seeded the ground for Donald Trump to do so many things autonomously. And people, I think, are right to raise ethical concerns. I guess the good news is that unlike other historic foreign gifts that we've discussed during this segment, this one does appear to be in the sunlight, in the sunshine. And so, when you know that there is this relationship, then they're about to head overseas to this Gulf states trip. They said it's about strengthening ties. I also think, that, just to be honest, I think if you consider the fact that their Middle East envoy appears to be trying to send a signal in part to Israel. They said, look, we're bringing Eden Alexander home, but Israel doesn't want to end the war. And so I think that they are trying to say, listen, we will do business with anybody that wants to be in business with us. And I think, look, and the ethical concerns are what they are, but that's the nature when you have somebody who considers himself the ultimate deal maker, as Donald Trump does.
Yeah, I want to talk about this clause in the Constitution, the Emoluments Clause here, and the fact that, if this goes through, it will ultimately live at some future Trump presidential library for his personal use in that capacity. Does that violate the Emoluments Clause, do you think, because of that fact that future presidents won't be using this, new jet as Air Force One? It's going to a future Trump presidential library. I know we're talking about a lot of hypotheticals here, but that's something people have fixated on.
Yeah, I think it's a very fair question, Andrew. And the reality is that there's a lot of lawyers who agree with you that, yes, it is a violation of the Emoluments Clause. And the people who disagree might agree if the names and political affiliations were reversed. And so this is an example of, I think people are right to raise questions. They're right to ask questions. I think Donald Trump tried to shoot it down when an ABC News reporter asked him about it earlier today. But I just think it's important to say, listen, that it appears to be, I think it raises plenty of questions. And I think it's your job, it's the media's job to ask those questions. And I think you want to evaluate any future deals with the country of Qatar in the lens of, well, remember, they did do this. But I guess I would just say, as somebody who's kind of studies government ethics professionally, I will say I think you have to give Donald Trump credit. As many questions as this arrangement raises, he hasn't proven himself to be, I think, easily swayed in a partisan or kind of one-note fashion by things of this nature. I think he does have a pretty decent track record of putting the American people first, regardless of where whatever special interests may side. But I think this will be another thing to kind of watch, given obviously the historic nature of this context.
And for the record, when the report came out by ABC News just yesterday, I mean, there were many people kind of off and on the record denying the report. And then, of course, President Trump came out just this morning, basically confirming the report here. He was commenting on it. Lastly, I want to ask you this. Are the concerns valid when you ask the question, do you worry that Qatar will want something in return? Are people asking that question? Is that the right question to ask?
Well, I think it can be the right question to ask. To Donald Trump, it's not. He compared this $400 million gift to like somebody giving him a short putt during a golf match, which raises questions of, how friendly are the people Donald Trump plays golf with? If that's the context. No, I think it is a fair question. Everyone has a job to play. If there's one area in which I think Donald Trump occasionally in his administration missteps, I do think it's like they didn't need to kind of do things to raise this question. There's enough happening that seems positive for the administration. They're resetting with China. They've got this historic drug price negotiation, right? They're bringing hostages home. And so you do something like this, and it almost seems like he's doing it because he can get away with it. You're hearing an increasing level of frustration from members of Congress who feel sidelined. And I don't imagine conducting a deal unilaterally between the Department of Defense and a foreign country and not involving any other aspect of government. It's not going to do anything to kind of quell those concerns.
All right, Eric Eggers, we're going to have to leave it at that. I can't thank you enough for your time. We'll definitely talk soon.
Hey, my pleasure, Andrew. Thank you.
Thank you.